first webinar, Rise with Shobhana Bhartia. And we are all really excited to begin. Flow Kanpur is a 5-year-old chapter with around 250 members, and we still have miles to go further. We are not afraid of storms. We are learning to sail our ship. I, Meenu Jhunjhunwala, Treasurer, Flow Kanpur chapter, with great pride and honor, would like to welcome amongst us our esteemed guest and iconic businesswoman, Shobhana Bhartia, our President-elect of FICCI Flow, Jahnavi Phukan, our Senior Vice President-elect, FICCI Flow, Ujjwala Singhania, all the GB members, the chapter chairs, and all our flow members. Now, I would like to call upon our chairperson, Dr. Aarti Gupta, to begin our session. Aarti, over to you.
Thank you, Meenu. A very good afternoon, everyone. Our esteemed guest, Mrs. Shobhana Bhartia, National President-elect, Mrs. Jahnavi Phukan, Senior Vice President-elect, Mrs. Ujjwala Singhania, esteemed GB members, my fellow chapter chairs, and dear Flow members. It is indeed an honor for our chapter to begin our year with one of India's most powerful women and a founding member of FICCI Flow, Mrs. Shobhana Bhartia. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. Born in the illustrious Birla family, Mrs. Bhartia is the chairman and group editorial director of Hindustan Times Media Limited. Named amongst the top 100 most powerful women in the world by Forbes magazine, Shobhana ji has transformed HT Media from a print-only traditional media company into a professionally run media conglomerate that spans over English, Hindi, digital, and radio. She has been a recipient of several awards, including the Padma Shri, one of India's highest civilian honor. An ex-parliamentarian, Shobhana ji was the one to introduce the child marriage abolition bill in the parliament. I'm extremely humbled and happy to have her here today to speak to us about her journey from being a daughter in a conservative Marwari family to becoming the first lady of Indian media. Shobhana ji, I cannot believe I met you so many years ago as a young girl myself and was so inspired and awestruck by you. And today, as a FICCI Flow Kanpur chairperson, I have this wonderful privilege and honor of hosting you. Being able to track your journey, and while I was researching on what all you've accomplished, it dawned upon me that in the journalistic field and in this field of media, you cannot use the word media without using the name Shobhana Bhartia. For our welcome address, I would like to invite our guest of honor, FICCI Flow's National President-elect, Mrs. Jahnavi Phukan. A dynamic entrepreneur, Jahnavi ji hails from the beautiful city of Guwahati and is the first Flow National President from the Northeast. She's extremely passionate about women empowerment and has been tirelessly working towards building programs and shaping policies to bring sustainable livelihoods for the women's economic upliftment. She's an inspiration to all of us today, and we are privileged to have her join us. Thank you. Over to you, Jahnavi ji.
Thank you for the introduction, Ritu. A very warm welcome first to Shobhana Bhartia and to all my Flow fraternity here. It gives me great pleasure to see how the young chapter Kanpur has come up, and especially to see that we have our past president, Shobhana Bhartia, who was leading our organization in 87, 88, when I understand there were no chapters. And today, Ms. Bhartia, we are 8,000 women, we are 17 chapters. So I'm here today to learn from you what is that you would like to see us doing in Flow, and also to take us through your journey from the early 80s, when I'm sure it wasn't easy to break forth and head the media house that you do, become one of the 100 powerful women of the world, and still going strong. So we are immensely proud. And I'm personally very excited to be here myself. And on behalf of my Flow fraternity, we are all waiting to hear your journey without much ado. Thank you. Look forward.
Thank you, Jahnavi. That was such a heartwarming welcome. We will now begin our session. Members joining in, If you have any questions you would like to ask Mrs. Bhartia, please type them in the chat box and our team will look into it. Shobhana ji, you were 29 years old when you started working with Hindustan Times. At that time, the majority view was that a woman's rightful place belongs at home or for doing charitable work. Can you elaborate as to what this journey was like and what were the challenges you faced?
Thank you, Aarti, and thank you, Janvi ji, for having me. It's quite different trying to do these kind of talks now using technology. It's seems to be the new normal. It's such a far cry from the time when I actually started working, and there were hardly any technological support systems that one had. Those were very different days, and perhaps being a kind of a single child at home, I wasn't the only child, but there was a huge age difference between me and my sister. So they were married when I was still relatively very young, not even a teenager. So I kind of grew up more with my father, with my parents, and the conversations around home would, be quite a lot about current affairs, politics. The family was very involved with that. So from an early age, I had quite a passion for journalism. And that's when I actually spoke to my father and wanted to get involved with the Hindustan Times. However, it was a couple of years of being put through the entire training in various departments. I was like an intern. And I still remember the first day when I went to office, there were kind of raised eyebrows. I think there were two things against me then. Of course, they are not relevant today. But when you're talking of things back in the 80s, what went against me was gender and age. Both seem to be wrong. I was thought of as being far too young to be venturing into the world of media. And then, as you rightly said, attitudes have changed, mindsets have changed. But back then, we were a lot more conservative. And therefore, having a woman who's wanting to come into a senior management role, although I came in as a trainee for many, many years, was something that was a little alien to everyone. It was much more of a male-dominated ecosystem. In fact, strangely, the media, even now globally, seems to be pretty much male-dominated. When I go for international conferences and attend other workshops, there are very few women who are really empowered in the media at a very senior level. Of course, there are many, many journalists, very bright, doing very well, many people on the managerial side, but very few have actually reached a position of have reached the top of the pyramid. So back then in the 80s, the challenge was felt, both because I felt I had to earn people's respect. It wasn't easy when you start off with people already having a prejudice because of your gender. Also believing that perhaps you're coming in as a pastime, perhaps because you happen to also be the promoter. It's something for you to look at and you're going to get bored and you're going to leave quite soon. And then when they start realizing that no, that's not happening after 8 months, a year and a half, that you're here to stay, there still was, I would say, a fair amount of pushback in terms of acceptability, because people were not used to working alongside. I would not say working for, because as I told you, I was going through various different aspects of publishing and getting training in each one of them for a duration of 6 months to 8 months. So I was working along with colleagues. So whilst the editorial side, which is where my passion was receptive, I did find that there was quite a lot of pushback till people eventually realized that you're here to stay. You have to take people along, work with them, and sometimes kind of hold your own and not, get very turned off when you feel that everything was not as receptive or everything was not as well laid out as you expected it to be. So those were my initial challenges, Aarti. I'm not getting your voice.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Shobhana ji. It seems like it was an arduous task. And thank you so much for standing up for yourself, because when you stood up for yourself, you unknowingly stood up for so many of us women today. My next question, Shobhana ji, is young businessmen and women usually face challenges when they start working with their father or join the family business. What were the hurdles when you faced when you joined your father, Mr. Birla? And what would your advice be to all young girls joining their family business today?
Again, things have changed a lot in the last few decades. Today, even family-run businesses are run much more professionally. You always try and acquire and identify the best talent and have the best person to do a job. And therefore, as I see it, today I'm a promoter, but I'm a lot more hands-off than I was perhaps in the 80s or the 90s, at least on the management side, because ours is a very professionally run company where we identify and pick people. And my job as a promoter is to constantly be able to evaluate, identify, attract, and motivate talent, get the best minds to come and help me in this journey, and then to constantly keep in touch, to constantly evaluate where we are, benchmark our performances, lay out a vision, what we want to achieve in the short term, medium term, long term. So the role is less of being a full hands-on person running the company. And I think that's generally the trend you find in all companies, because we are living in a very competitive environment. And therefore the right to win is for those who have the most efficient form of functioning. And therefore most family-run businesses, not just media, but whether you look at media, manufacturing, services, it's always the preferred option is now much more a professional approach, bringing in the best people to do the job. But back then, things were a little different. People were trying to, family-run businesses were run by most competent people within a family. So I think things have changed a lot. So my advice now, when you ask me for women, but equally for anyone who's wanting to get into the family business. Of course, even now for women, it is a little more challenging because you still need the acceptance of people around you, acceptance first of your family that needs to stand by you, encourage you, and then acceptance of your colleagues at work to understand that you're there to work alongside them and to help them. So my advice is that pursue your passion. So if you are passionate in a particular industry, if you're passionate about working, there are always trade-offs and there are always sacrifices, and you need to learn how to manage your time. And then to earn the respect of your people, you need to be able to showcase that you're there as a colleague working with them and trying to do what best you can for the organization or the company that you're working with, even if that means, as I told you, acquiring external talent.
That's some really interesting piece of advice. Any trick for someone to, to get past that whole generational gap ideas, like the new age has new ideas and the older generation, it's a little tough getting past that. Any particular trick of trade which you can share with us, to get past that?
No, I think there's nothing short of persuasion. I think if you have conviction and if you can prove that a newer concept or a newer technology or a newer way of working would be more beneficial, and if you're doing it with enough passion and conviction, I think it's a matter, I think things like this, require a certain softer element which can't always be compiled in terms of, a standard operating procedures. It's more your persuasive skills with your stakeholders. Your stakeholders could be family, it could be the senior management, it could be others who are involved in the work, to try and make them realize that there could be another way of looking at things, there could be an alternative way of approaching an idea, and making them realize the benefits in that. Because nobody would like to do things differently unless you feel there's valid reason for doing so. So I think much comes from your domain knowledge of what you're wanting to do and why you believe it needs to be done differently, not just because you want to do it differently. So why you believe it needs to be done differently and how it will benefit you and all the stakeholders. So I think if you have conviction and domain knowledge in that, I think persuasion is the only vehicle that you have, but sooner or later people can see merit in what you're saying if you are convinced about your own thoughts.
Great, thank you. I hope all young girls and boys are listening to this. This is some really solid piece of advice. My next question, Shobhana ji, is you've always said that the newspaper is a mind product and media is like a cause which has the responsibility of molding the opinion of people for the betterment of the society. I understand you're a journalist at heart. So how do you manage the commercial side of the business?
We have a kind of a Chinese wall in terms of the distinction between editorial and management. So there are two different hats one wears. I believe that there's a linkage because unless you have a strong proposition to sell, unless you have a strong product, the revenue doesn't follow. So whereas my personal passion has always been journalism, and that's what actually gets me excited, that's what gets me going. I don't try and mix the two roles, and our professionals who are working in terms of media marketing, revenue collection, selling of ads, because the primary source of revenue for a newspaper organization in India is ad revenue. Unfortunately, we don't cover the cost of even producing a paper with the cover price or with the circulation amount that we get. And you would know that, Aarti, because you belong to a publishing family as well. So your entire revenue really needs to come from advertisements. And so the people who are selling ads, who are selling space, who are selling your brand are doing so independent. They're doing it on the basis of what your reach is, whether your reach is through the physical product or online presence or various platforms, and on the pulling power of your brand and on the positioning of your brand. So you don't necessarily really need to combine both the roles. But yes, as a senior most editorial resource for the Hindustan Times, what we do and what I do now much more scientifically than what we used to do in the 80s is try and understand who am I producing this product for. So what is my target audience? You can't be everything to everyone. And so you have different products with different niches that they want to occupy, and all are fine. So you'll have some tabloids in Britain. We don't have the tabloid culture which is so prevalent in India. And rightly, they want to be salacious, they want to be gossipy, they don't necessarily want to be accurate. But please understand, it's a chosen positioning that they've taken. It's not that they're just very irresponsible, or it's not that they're just very sort of sensational. It's a positioning. Or you have niche products, whether it's The Economist, that globally also doesn't sell even a fraction of what Indian newspapers sell, but it's very high up there in terms of, the positioning it's chosen for itself as a more informing, upscale, analytical product. And there's a business case out there as well for them. Or you may have the New Yorker, or you may have mass products like we all have, especially the vernacular papers that we have in India. So therefore, in my own stable also, so whether it's a Mint, whether it's a Hindustan Times, or whether it's Hindustan, they have different positionings. So as an editorial interface, I first try and understand who's my TG, who's my target group. So which is a group that I want to address. And there I look at which group I think I'll be a better fit for and where I can monetize my business. Keeping in mind, after identifying which is the target group, you then need to understand which socio-economic category they belong to, what are their likes and dislikes, what is it that they're looking for. People are no longer going to a newspaper because they want to read what's happened today, what the cabinet has decided, or what a chief minister has sort of ordered for the next few days. They want to know where they can travel, what they can eat, what is healthy, how they should exercise, how are the consumer services around them. So it's just a lot more news you can use, moving also into the softer news space. So therefore, the understanding of your target groups is something that I actively involve myself in on a regular basis by understanding what their likes are, what are the areas that are trending for them, what are the things they're looking for, and then giving that back, putting that back in the domain of the management side, which can then come up with a product profile to cater to my target group, giving them a product that he or she really wants. So I try and be the interface, and so to that extent, the Chinese wall is broken, and to that extent, we work seamlessly, understanding who are we making the product for, who are they, what is their age group, what do they want, and getting the marketing side to actually come up with a product like that. But beyond that, it's not like, the management side actually weighs in, and so there's no conflict of interest.
Interesting, and just as a follow-up question, what hat do you like to wear more, the editorial or the management hat?
Without even thinking, the editorial.
That's
That
where
was my passion always.
Yeah. My next question to you, Shobhana ji, is that HT is a multidimensional and one of the most prominent media organizations in the world. But with the advent of new forms of media and tweets flying around the world in seconds, how has your company adapted to the changing media consumption of Indians today?
So the first thing was to change people's mindsets within the organization and to make them sort of come out of the concept that they were print journalists. So today, basically, content is becoming platform agnostic. Our job is to be content providers. So we need to churn out quality content. That content can be leveraged over multiple platforms. It can be used in print. It can be used on radio. We have radio channels. It can be used on Twitter. It can go on Instagram. It can go on Facebook. So the main thing is that you produce content, your content creators, the content needs to get amplified. So you may amplify your content by first putting out a tweet, by first putting out, breaking news for those who are following the app on mobile phones, or for putting up pictures and small stories on Instagram. People who are more interested will click in the bio, come to the main story, or go to the physical paper and pick up the paper and read the story in depth. Even there, if there's paucity of space, very often we have a truncated story, and then we have a link that says for more details, go online. So you've actually got to blur the dividing lines between different platforms and rethink of yourself really only as a content provider. Leave it to people how they're going to use your content. So the technology team will decide whether the content is going on Twitter or whether it's going on Facebook, or how you actually amplify the content that you have. So it's a whole change of mindset, which we actually embarked on almost 5 or 8 years ago. And it's pretty much there in the organization now.
Thank you. I've read somewhere that you always had a plethora of different newspapers on your desk every morning. Has your medium of media consumption changed in any way?
I have to say that I'm still very old world, and I miss not having a paper in my hands, and I still prefer reading a newspaper. But having said that, our need for news consumption is so high that you want to get news on the go. So you can't wait till the next day. So my own consumption habits, of course, have changed in the sense I'm constantly looking at news breaks. I'm constantly scrolling the various platforms to see what has happened. And I like going to Twitter because it gives you a very good sense of what is trending, what are people talking about. So though I don't actively participate on Twitter under a personal account, but I follow Twitter, and it gives you interesting sort of links to things other than politics as well, in terms of economic stories, softer stories, health related issues. So my own consumption has changed hugely in terms of consuming a lot of the social media. But if you ask me, my preferred choice, of course, it goes back to the newspaper.
Good. I think that's how it is for most people.
Yes.
Yeah. So moving on, India has recently ranked very poorly in the Global Press Freedom Index. In fact, it dropped from the 80th rank in 2002 to 142 in the most recent ranking. Do you think these rankings are a fair reflection of the reality in India?
I don't really think so. I think they're quite subjective, and basically, it's not a standardized study, so I don't want to go into it too much. It's not like it's being conducted by the UN or any other such global institutional body. It's a kind of a private initiative started, and in the absence of any other benchmark, it is cited. Every time there's a defamation case that is filed, every time, whether it's a state government or a government that files a defamation case, immediately we are thought of like a tin pot banana republic. And it's like, oh, in India, there's no freedom of expression. So Article 19(2) actually granted us freedom of expression, but it doesn't come without any checks and balances. So therefore, our freedom of expression is not an absolute freedom. And such is the case in most countries. And therefore, there are strong defamation laws. There are platforms on which people can get redressal. But the most important thing is that the judiciary is very strongly in favor of a strong and vibrant media. And therefore, people have recourse to whatever platforms, even if it's from a pushback from the government, even if there are cases piled onto media organizations from state governments or local bodies or central governments, you still have recourse to judicial intervention, which has been extremely supportive of having a free and a fair press. So I wouldn't say that, you know, India's ranking is falling or that we don't have press freedom, because if you look around you, you have enough media organizations, bodies, blogs, which actually cover a very varied kind of positioning. There are some which are just inherently very anti-establishment, irrespective of whether the establishment is a current political party or the former party that ruled for 2 terms. The positioning is just to be anti-establishment, to be activist, to be sort of very investigative, and to constantly find what's not done. So these are all positionings, but I wouldn't say that they don't survive. You have, you know, a whole mix and milieu of media, and I think I really wouldn't go on the basis of this rating. Having said that, yes, you have different kinds of state governments also, some a lot more tolerant. In some, we have seen some very strange punitive actions, especially in the last couple of years, where some people have been arrested and some people have been charged with all kinds of various sections which are not commensurate with what they've done. But eventually, there is a court of law. People have taken recourse to that, and it has actually worked in a very transparent manner. So I think we have the requisite checks and balances in the country. And with that, I wouldn't say that we're really any worse off or that India's ranking is actually slipping.
Thank you. That's so reassuring to hear from a large media house like you. Shobhana ji, I cannot help but ask you to reflect on the current unprecedented times. Every business today, however big and small, has been affected by the COVID-19 virus. And we've all had to go back to the drawing board and rethink the way forward. How are you currently navigating your company during these times? And what is your advice to all entrepreneurs and leaders?
Well, it is an extremely, extremely difficult time. And honestly, I think none of us really thought that we would be in such a situation. You know, we've gone through the slowdown, we've gone through the whole global meltdown of 2008, and yet things were so much better than what they are now. And the scary bit is that we don't know when we are going to come out of it. We don't know when we are going to go back to being normal. And therefore, we have to believe, is this the new normal? And if it is, how long will it last? So the markets are flat. There's no economic activity. We started opening up. I'm expecting that we open up more perhaps on Monday when the new guidelines are announced today. So as we pick up economic activity, we have to see how much of it actually takes off at the ground level. Because whilst we may decide as a nation, and we seem to have that economic activity is extremely important, and therefore guidelines have been somewhat relaxed, the virus and the disease remains. So in spite of the government opening up and saying that, okay, factories can start, production can start, the seamless supply chain will start working, how much of a demand is there going to be? Are people going to go out and go to restaurants? Are they going to go out and shop? Are they going to want to travel? What will happen to the travel industry? Are people going to stay in hotels? Are they going to take airlines? Are airlines ever going to recover? So, you know, all these questions remain at large. So the only thing companies can do, and what we are doing today, is really conserve cash. Conserve cash as never before. And therefore knock off all non-essential expenditure in companies. Try and streamline operations. And what COVID has done, it's made us so dependent on technology that you actually now realize that perhaps you can work in a more efficient way. So once COVID is over, I don't know whether we'll have the same sort of traveling in our company like we have now. I don't know whether I'll want to fly an executive to another city for a 3-hour meeting when he can do it like we are doing this meeting just now. I don't know whether I'd want people to make trips unnecessarily. So technology has actually forced us to change the way in which we are working. Do we need everyone at work, or can we have flexi work hours with a certain percentage of your employees working from home? And if they do work from home, then your overall cost of hiring so many offices or having large offices may shrink. You may not need as many office space. You may not need as many desks and chairs. So how we'll come out of it, we're still in a churn. Nobody really has the answer because none of us know when we'll come out of it and what is going to be the state of the economy when we come out of it. But in the short term, it's really conserve cash, knock out whatever you feel is non-essential. We have reduced our pagination. We are now giving the readers almost the same amount of content and news. But because there are no ads, it's become a much, much thinner, smaller paper. We've reduced many other non-essential expenditures. So the only thing now is to really streamline and make your operations extremely efficient, because we don't know whether we are in this only for a few months or whether we are going to be in this for longer, for more than a year. God alone knows. None of us really have the answer to that.
That's true, but that's some really good advice about conserving as much cash as possible. My next question is, what are your thoughts on the recent economic package which was announced by the government, if for whatever details are available today?
It's a little, part of the details are only available. I think it's a lot of policy changes. There are a lot of structural changes. I'm not quite sure at this stage how soon they'll kick in, whether they're going to kick in more in the medium and long term, and whether they are going to be impactful enough to help us in the short term. I was hoping for more of a fiscal stimulus. What we have is a mix of credit stimulus, and part of it is fiscal. So a lot of it is to do with credit actually, and therefore it's not money in people's hands. So far we've seen 3 or 4 different stakeholders who the government has addressed, whether it's MSME, whether it was farmers, whether it's migrant laborers, whether it's small traders. So it's not a lot of immediate money in their hands. One will have to see what the next 2 announcements are going to be like before I really want to offer too many comments, because many countries have actually used a combination of both. Therefore, they've given fiscal stimulus by actually putting more money in the hands of people, money to be able to pay salaries, money so that you don't retrench people, money so that short businesses have to pay leases for their premises, can pay those, and credit stimulus where you're given a longer credit, where a collateral may not be asked. So many countries have actually combined both. The package we've seen so far really gives you much more credit stimulus than fiscal stimulus, but let's see, we have another 2. So I think it's always good to hope that you see much more happening.
Yes, we can always remain positive for some
Yes.
good news. Yes. Moving on to another topic, Shobhana ji, as a founding member of FICCI-FLO and also a national past president, what are your thoughts on the role FICCI-FLO is playing today as a chamber of commerce? And how do you see this largest women entrepreneur organization in Asia evolving further?
To be very candid, I've not really been in touch, so I have not really been very briefed about all the activities. But the moment you said that the Kanpur chapter has, correct me if I'm wrong, 200 or 250, did you say, members?
Members, yes.
Well, it was a struggle even to get 100 members for FLO nationally when we set it up. So this makes me feel we've come such a long way, and FLO has obviously done a great job in terms of activating people, activating women to at least initially take enough interest to want to associate with such an organization, where it serves as a bridge between what their needs are, what their requirements are, and also helps them in terms of networking with other entrepreneurs like them, so that you have shared common problems, shared common solutions. So it's come a long way. And I did go to FLO recently, last year actually, for an annual function, I think when Pinky Reddy was there. And I was really, really very impressed to see the complete transformation of the organization, which I was instrumental in setting up. And I think FLO has come a long, long way. It's very professional. And I think you're doing a sterling job in terms of giving this platform and opportunity to so many women across the country who may not have the support system otherwise of knowing how to take forward their dreams or their vision. So yeah, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come in here. I'd like to come in here. Thank you
Yes.
for that, Shobhana. Shobhana, it's great listening to you. And I had a question. So
Sure.
now that we are a body of 8,000 women, how best should we be? You know, I think we should perceive ourselves as a social change, as a social capital. So we need to be able to give out to the world the awareness of what we're doing, and how can we amplify our message? How could we work with the media so that all our chapters do work together and this gets amplified through the media? There should be a happy marriage, I think, because the work was going on within our chapters should also go out to the country and get into a larger body. So we need to work closely with the media on that, I feel. The kind of work we've developed now, from skill development, this year we're looking at going into sustainable livelihood for women, which is so important, and sustainable practices. So these are the message amplification, the positive stories of all the women in Flow who can do so much, each in their own way can contribute to society. And
sure, it will be good to showcase them, and it will be also good to sort of at least reach out to the local audiences of the particular media, depending on which state, which city, and also provide information to other women that, they can also avail of help and support from such a body. It's interesting to know what is happening, because that in itself would very often encourage and motivate some who, haven't kind of thought aloud, but sometimes, you've just got thoughts running through your mind. And then when you read about it and you see other people are doing something, then you also step forward. So I think the positive success stories, it would be good for you all to have a media engagement policy and share those.
Mm-hmm. And we see ourselves as a role now, as a catalyst for change. We should be the connecting dot between the government and the schemes and the implementing agencies, and be able to work on the ground, basically with women at all levels.
Absolutely. You should work with the government also and see how receptive they are.
Yes. So we hope to take that forward, and great to have you as our voice of the media, which we will reach out to you more often than not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead, Aarti.
Thank you, Shobhana ji, and thank you, Jahanvi, for this. Shobhana ji, your strength as a leader is people skills. You've been known to identify and acquire the best talent and bring the best out of people. Is this a skill you've always had, or did you work upon it and hone it in your journey as an entrepreneur?
I think interpersonal skills are something that we all have to work on all the time. I think it's an ongoing exercise, and I don't think it's something that ends because you think you've acquired it, because no two people are the same, and therefore the ability to be able to interact and reach out to people, the ability to be able to, some people have a habit of conveying things in a different way, people's mannerisms are different. So you've got to actually look for this, you've got to try and identify the skills that you are looking for, which you think will be a good fit in your business. And therefore some skills require more articulate people who can actually frame issues better. And many other skills need not necessarily require somebody to seem to be very articulate or seem to be very knowledgeable. So you've got to be able to kind of look beyond and try and find the skill set you're looking for without getting sort of waylaid by external niceties.
Lovely. Shobhana ji, we're running out of time and we have lots of Q&A pouring in. But before that, I cannot help but ask you something about your family. You and Mr. Bhartia run two separate and massively successful companies. Do you seek professional advice and mentorship from each other? What are dinner table conversations like? Is it all shop?
Dinner table is never talking shop. So when we come back home, it's not to talk about work, because we have 2 children, their families, and the evenings are all about us being together as a family and talking of 100 more interesting things than just your work. So we leave our work behind at work, in office. And if there are any issues and I feel my husband can help me, I can always pick up the phone and talk to him during work hours. But at home, we totally desist from discussing work. That was a kind of a rule I laid down a while ago, because with both me and Sham, working. It could have been a very, very boring existence at home if the entire conversations only revolved around our problems and our work.
No, absolutely. That's some great strategy which we all can adopt in our lives as well. I would now like to hand it over to Meenu to take forward for Q&A. We have lots of questions from our members, Shobhana ji. So
Sure.
Meenu, take it over.
Thank you, Shobhana ji. Your insights have been so enriching and so enlightening. We were just stuck onto it. Let's take up the first question we have from Usha Rani Mane. If you could just put it up to her, the tech team.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Usha Rani Manne, Chairperson, Hyderabad chapter. Hi, Shobhana.
Hi.
You are a role model to so many women today. Who is that one woman you consider as your role model or mentor?
You know, I've been asked this question quite often, and to be very candid with you, I don't want to just take a name because I haven't really kind of got a role model as a woman role model. I think it's just taking the best qualities out of different people who had the courage to do the things they wanted to. So I don't have a role model, but I got a lot of help from Catherine Graham, who was the chairperson of the Washington Post and was pushed into that situation and was self-taught on the job. And when I started working, I needed to educate myself because journalism wasn't even something that was taught in India, and nor was newspaper management. So I thought that I should try and learn from perhaps the best in the world. And I reached out to her, and that was the beginning of a long-standing relationship and friendship. And I went over, spent time in Washington. I spent time at the Post. And I would say in many ways, I greatly admired her because she came from a background where she wasn't looking at working. She wasn't a professional. She was pushed into it because of the death of her husband. And the way she rose to the occasion, and eventually Watergate was a decision that she took, which actually removed the American president in office. So how she coped with the stress of our kind of job, how she coped with stepping into a man's world. So there was a lot that I learned from her and admired. But again, as I mentioned, so there are, you know, different areas of strength that you derive from different people. But I would find it difficult to just talk of any one person as a role model.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Dharitri Patnaik. Over to you.
It was really inspiring to hear you speak. And my question is, like you did mention that the consumption is completely different now for news, for media. And we've got so many different ways and medium of getting information. But would you still advise young women or women to start their own media houses now? What's your advice?
Well, you know, one has to evaluate whether there's a vacant space and if what you're offering is going to be different to what is already in the market. So I would say it's like evaluating any other product. So if you want to start a media house, you've got to see what is the profile that you want, what is the space that you want to occupy, will you be another Me Too, or why do you have the right to win? Why do you feel that you'll be able to give better quality journalism, or you're looking at a different profile? So many people start all kinds of niche products like a agricultural blog or something that just deals with, you know, cars and automobiles, and a magazine that deals with just vehicles and automobiles. So it really depends what you're looking for and if there's space in the market for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Chandini Kanodia with a question. Chandini, over to you. Tech team, could you just unmute Chandini? Thank you.
Hi, Shobhana ji. I have a very simple question to you that HT is a pioneer in news reporting, and handling employees in departments which is spread nationwide how do you manage it being the chief executive? And, understanding that news, when reported in the particular timeline, it gains the maximum attention. So how do you manage the employees which are spread nationwide? What are your views on micromanagement and macromanagement?
I think micromanagement and macromanagement are both required. Micromanagement is required in a particular task that you assign to yourself and where you are the key person responsible for that. But as I mentioned earlier, that more and more, and including in my organization, there's a lot of devolution of power and it's very decentralized. And therefore, we have a team of professionals who in turn then empower people beneath them. And so when you talk of having journalists and people all across, for instance, in Hindi, say for Hindustan and Bihar, we have a different edition almost every 100 kilometers. But there are different heads over there who would then report to a regional head, who would then report to a head for East, who would then report into somebody in Delhi. So it's through a org system. You have an organizational chart where you have different people who are accountable for different sets of people. So it really has to be done professionally like that. It's not like I would jump in and start trying to, micromanage people sitting somewhere. What I would micromanage is the task I set for myself.
Okay, thank you so much, Shobhana ji.
We have the next question from Chandrika Junjunwala. Chandrika?
Hi. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So my question is about women in business. So as soon as COVID happened, women, their natural instincts kicked in and they jumped into the roles of being nurturers. And do you think post COVID, do you think it'll be easy for women to transition back from, their role of being nurturers to, their professional lives? And like, how easy will it be for them to transition back? And how can they, any tips for you to like, tell them to like, how to strike a balance between?
Well, at the moment, everyone's home, men, women alike. Of course, people are going out to work, but only for essential work. And therefore the role of the woman as a homemaker of managing the home has also sort of, I guess, taken away a lot of her time. When COVID ends, and if and when it does, I'm sure life will go back to being where it was before we came in this unfortunate scenario. But even COVID apart, going forward, the woman wears many hats and therefore she can't stop being a homemaker, she can't stop being a mother, she can't stop being the anchor in the family, in addition to her working and being a professional. So therefore, time management for a woman really becomes a very crucial element in her desire to step out. And the only way in which you can achieve it and give quality time to your family, to give time to a home of which you may be proud. A lot of us have other passions, whether it's having a nice home, whether it's serving a good table, whether it's being a good mother. But a lot can be achieved if you actually learn how to manage your time. So time management, to my mind, is a very, very important aspect. It's a very important aspect for anyone, honestly. But for a woman, even much more, because she does wear many caps.
I agree. Thank you.
So true. I think we are all juggling and trying to come to terms with everything right now during this COVID-19 pandemic. The next question comes from Ruby Chawla. Over to you, Ruby.
Well, you've given so many years to your organization to finally reach where you are. And this requires a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, and a lot of patience. But we see a drop of patience level in the coming generation. So what suggestion, what piece of advice would you like to give to our young budding entrepreneurs if they have to work?
Well, the most important thing is passion, really. And if you have passion, then patience will follow. If you have passion and if you are convinced of your dream, then you'll find a way of trying to achieve it. And patience is something that will automatically come with it, because following your passion doesn't necessarily mean success always. It also means failures. It means failure very often. But you come out stronger with failure. But if you have the passion, you will bounce back and you will go and find another way of doing it. So have the passion, have the ability to dream, and don't be scared of failures.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Wow, thank you. We have Alka Dalmia ji. Over to you, Alka ji.
Oh, very good afternoon, Shobhana ji. As running a newspaper, how do you remain unbiased to any particular political ideology and maintain a decorum?
Well, the objectivity comes in through the edit columns of a paper. The columns are open for varying viewpoints, and we always believe in having a very healthy debate through the columns of the paper, and therefore reflecting multiple viewpoints, which one may personally agree or disagree with. But that's the beauty of media, that you're actually wanting to expose your readers to plurality of opinion and let the reader formulate his or her own opinion. You're entitled to your personal opinion, but that's not necessarily what you have to offer. So you don't distill it and offer it, but you let the reader make a choice by giving them the pros and cons and people writing for and against a particular initiative or a particular issue. And that's how you empower your readers as well. Whereas you keep your own personal opinion, you have a right to that, and that may be the way you see things, but every reader has a right to decide which way they want to go forward, whether they feel a particular change in a law is conducive or not conducive, whether they feel a particular political party actually best reflects the aspirations that they have, or they want a choice of another. And therefore, even in the run-up to elections, we always try and give equal amount of space to all major parties so that the consumer can make a more informed choice.
Thank you so much, Shobhana ji.
We have Neetu Singh, who wants to ask you something.
First of all, hello, Shobhana ji.
Hello.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to applaud you for being a symbol of dignity and competence on behalf of all the females here. And as you already are aware, there are very strong intention of FICCI is to be socially contributive. Could you educate us on the background and vision of Endeavour India, please? It would lend us a vision too.
I don't think I would be the right person to actually expand on that. You can read up on it, but I do think that FICCI and Flow should be socially responsible as well. And I think the best way forward really is, as Janvi ji said, to try and showcase how you're being socially responsible, because by doing that, you would attract many more people and encourage many more people to do the same.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Charu Vaid here, who has to ask something.
Good morning, ma'am, and thank you for your insight into your iconic journey. It's been very, very interesting. My question to you is, you joined HT as a very, very young person in 1986, and now more than 3 decades later, there's a major shift in the media from print to cyber. So what are the advantages and disadvantages you think this is, and which do you think is a stronger medium for media?
So I don't think there are any stronger mediums or any such thing, because, as technology progresses, it enables us in all the tasks we have in hand. So we can't constantly be stuck in a time warp and say, this is the way things were done in the 80s, so they'll be done like that endlessly. We used to go to a physical shop, we would wait in line and we would buy stuff. Today we've got Flipkart, we've got groceries, everything, with a click of a button, we are ordering things home. So technology is there for us to take advantage of. And therefore, it's not like whether it's this or that. Technology allows you to amplify your message and to get to many, many more people. And therefore, you have to use technology to your advantage. So you have to ensure that your reach expands manyfold because of technology. So the paper as it was in the 80s or the 90s remains, but the content of that paper just gets amplified and goes to so many more mobile phones, to so many more homes, whether it's through radio, Twitter, as I explained earlier. So technology is an enabler, it's a friend, it's an assistant in helping you achieve better penetration of your products. In this case, the product is media. Tomorrow, the product could be providing services, or it could be a wholesale market. It could be selling garments. It could be in any other field that you are. It's actually an enabler to help you get a better penetration and to reach out to more people.
Okay, yeah, that's very true. Thank you.
We have a senior vice president-elect, Ujjwala Singhania, who wants to ask you something.
Good morning, Shobhana ji. Thank you for the inspiration talk. I'd like to ask you, due to this pandemic, people have got used to reading e-newspapers, magazines. Do you see any change in the future, the way we get information, the way we read? What are your reviews on it?
Yes, you know, you're absolutely right that there's a change in readers, in the readership habits during COVID, which is actually, let me also say, unique only to India. It is felt by many RWAs or housing societies that it won't be safe to let the vendor come in and distribute papers. It may not be safe to bring in magazines. It's actually not borne out anywhere else in the world because the magazine print and the newspaper circulations remain unchanged. However, it is a reality in India, and therefore people are now using technology and they're consuming the contents of the magazines they want to read or the papers that they may be reading on their laptops, on their desktops. And I definitely feel that when things come back to normal, part of that would have changed. I don't see, if I had 100 readers earlier, I don't see all 100 going back to print. I do see some who've migrated now to digital, perhaps find it as convenient or maybe more convenient because you read it on the go. So I do feel that there will be a certain section that will drop off from magazines, from newspapers, and start consuming those through digital platforms.
Thank you so much.
We have Saloni Mehta here who wants to ask you something.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, Shobhana ji.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Though I've met you so many times and always wanted to know that since you are doing so much work, how do you remain so fit, pretty, and slim? I know you don't eat chocolates. Besides that.
No, I'm quite a fitness freak, and not necessarily only because of wanting to remain slim, but also because I think it's very important to energize your mind through fitness. And I think it's also very important from the health point of view. I have to struggle to stay in control of my weight, but I have many friends who are just very lucky with a constitution where they are very thin. And I keep trying to tell them it's very deceptive because your structure doesn't really indicate anything about your about the health, and therefore fitness should be seen much more as a health tool as opposed to only a tool to look how you look. And you have to be careful about the foods you eat because we are what we ingest. So you have to be careful what you're eating, and you have to be careful as to are you abusing your body and your organs, or are you giving them the much required oxygenation, the workout, and the rest that they need. I think that holds true for everyone.
Are you following a certain diet?
No, I use my own logic in terms of trying to keep to a carb-free diet as much as possible.
Thank you.
That's amazing. We have Ronita Modi here. Ronita, over to you.
Good afternoon, Shobhana ji.
Hello.
Hi. Going down memory lane a little bit, were there any blanket do's and don'ts handed over to you by your father when you took over the Hindustan Times? And a particular don't you recall? and a nugget of advice which you hold dear till day from him?
Well, the one thing which I think I've learned from my father, and it was a big, big don't, was you can't be late. I mean, punctuality was absolutely essential. And very often he would give us time also to come and discuss work. And very often the time would be, which I thought ridiculous then, but now with time, maybe I've become a little eccentric as well. It would be sometimes like 17 past 1, or it would go into not minutes of 5, but minutes of 2 and 3. And I would think, what on earth does he mean by it? But today I really am thankful for him having inculcated a very strong sense of punctuality with me and with my siblings, because I think that's what's allowing me to do my work, to carry on with any other interest, passion, or find the time to be with people I want to be with. You know, most of us want to do many things. You don't want to be sucked into a black hole where all you have is your work, and you're constantly telling everyone, I didn't have the time, I didn't have the time, I couldn't return your call, I didn't have the time. I believe if you need to find the time, you can find it. If the desire is strong enough, you will find the time for whatever you want to do. But for that, time management is very, very important. And if you don't have time management, then in spite of having, you know, all good intentions of wanting to do things, keeping in touch with people, wanting to be a good mother, wanting to be a good sibling, you can't do it because you're so messed up, because you know you don't know yourself how you're running late. Before you know it, the day is over. So that's one very important habit that was drilled into all of us by my father. We kind of resisted growing up thinking that this Hitler-like behavior where we were punished for being late was, you know, quite absurd. But I am very thankful for that today, and it has helped me hugely.
Oh, thank you so much.
That is so true. And this is something I think we just need to teach our children. It just helps. It pays off later. Such an important thing. I think there's so many questions coming up, but due to paucity of time, I think we can just take a last question from Nalini Sanwal, please. Nalini?
You can hear me? Yeah. My regards to Shobhana ji. My regards to Shobhana ji. I too belong to Kolkata, and I will take you back there. There was a prestigious store by your name, Shobhana Jewelers, in Kolkata. Is that passion still alive, or what keeps you going on the lighter side?
That had nothing to do with me, but it was my father's, and it shut down some years ago, sadly.
Yeah,
So
I know that. I'm aware.
I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that passion that keeps you alive other than being a passionate media baron?
Well, I'm a very voracious reader. I enjoy workouts a lot. I enjoy fitness regimen. I enjoy traveling a lot, and I love reading. And then family time. I think that's what keeps me going. I enjoy spending time with my friends, with my family. I like human interaction, and I think it gives a lot of us strength very often to deal with all kinds of situations. And I feel grateful for having the family and friends I have. And I think it's a privilege that I can take out the time and spend with them. And I do that. And for me, after my work, to be with my friends and my family and my workout is all that I want.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you all.
Thank you.
One quote which comes up: here's to strong women. May we know them. May we be them. May we raise them. It just seems so apt for you. And now for some exchanges, as you all know, we don't believe in giving flowers, but instead we get a tree planted in Sundarbans with a tracking number mentioned on the certificate. And I would like to request our National President-elect, Janavi Kukan, and our Chairperson, Aarti Gupta, to present the green certificate and memento to Shobhana Bhartia ji. Over to you, Aarti and Janavi.
Yes. That is fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is such a great idea and a good initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shobhana ji, we'll
Wish
try
you
and
all the best.
Thank you so much, Shobhana ji. It was
Thank you, Aarti.
so much, and we hope to have you back with us
Absolutely.
again and again. And may I leave you with one thought that from the media that you belong to, we would need more and more positive stories going from all corners. I understand Eastern India really doesn't get much bandwidth in the rest of the country. It's like we don't exist. So please see that, we all come as one India and not in one corner, and positive story. And I know only you can do that for us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Now,
Thank you, Aarti.
I would just like to call upon our Senior Vice Chair, Kanika Vaid, to just say a few words, please. Kanika, over to you, please.
Hi, good afternoon. One has to move with the current to swim ahead, and clearly the current is digital. What an inspiration session we have with you, Shobhana ji. It was extremely grateful for you. Thank you, ma'am, for playing such a vital role in being an inspiration to all the women entrepreneurs in India. I express my heartfelt gratitude to our National President-elect, Mrs. Janvi Phukan, and our Senior Vice President-elect, Mrs. Ujjwala Singhania, to grace this occasion with their presence. I would also like to thank our chapter chair, Dr. Aarti Gupta, for giving us an opportunity to have an insight into the life of such an iconic woman like Mrs. Bhartia. I express my deepest thanks to all the GB members, chapter chairs, and floor members for joining us today. Not to forget, thank you for our dear members who came forward to make this event an interactive with questions being voices of others. Media, always there for showcasing our work. Last but not the least, our sponsors who are always there as our hidden backgrounds for all our projects. My heartfelt thanks goes to Loia Corp, Balencia Socks, and Art Dinox for their support. Thank you everyone once again for joining with us in our journey to rise. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shobhana ji, for such a wonderful session. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, girls. Great job.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
well.
you, for joining.
To all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.